Welcome to Life Stories, where we bring you inspiring tales of kindness, resilience, and the beauty of the human spirit. In today's story, we follow Emma, a single mother working tirelessly as a taxi driver to provide for her 10-year-old son, Jake. Her life takes an unexpected turn one night when a selfless act of compassion transforms not only her world but her son's future in ways she never imagined. Join us as we delve into this heartfelt journey of love, sacrifice, and the profound impact of generosity. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to begin today's story. Emma adjusted the rearview mirror of her old taxi, watching the city lights of Chicago flicker in the distance. The night was calm, with a soft breeze sweeping through the streets. She sighed deeply, thinking about her son Jake and the excitement that awaited him the next day. It had taken her an entire week of long shifts and back-to-back rides to save enough for the amusement park tickets, a gift, and a small celebration. But it would all be worth it when she saw his face light up with joy. Jake, her 10-year-old son, was the center of her universe. Since his father had left them years ago, Emma had worked tirelessly to provide a stable and happy life for her boy. Despite the financial struggles, she had always ensured that Jake never felt the weight of their hardships. She wanted him to have the carefree childhood every child deserved. As she pulled into a quiet street to drop off her latest passenger, Emma felt a sense of relief. The elderly man in the back seat had been kind, tipping her generously despite his frail demeanor. "Thank you for the ride," he said softly, his hand trembling as he handed her the crumpled bills. Emma gave him a warm smile. "You're welcome. Take care of yourself." The man nodded and stepped out of the car, his movements slow and unsteady. Emma watched him for a moment, a flicker of concern crossing her face. But he waved at her reassuringly before turning to walk away. With a sigh, Emma tucked the money into her purse, silently celebrating the completion of her savings goal. Tomorrow would be a day Jake would never forget. Emma's heart swelled with pride as she thought of her son. Jake had been her constant source of strength and joy, his infectious laughter filling the small apartment they called home. She could already picture him running toward the roller coasters, his face glowing with excitement. These were the moments she lived for, the times when all her sacrifices felt worthwhile. As she adjusted her seat to prepare for her next ride, Emma glanced at the rearview mirror again. Her chest tightened. The elderly man, who had just walked away moments ago, was now lying on the sidewalk. His frail hand was raised weakly, as if signaling for help. Without hesitation, Emma turned off the engine and rushed to his side. Her heart pounded as she knelt beside him. "Sir, are you okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. His breathing was shallow, his face pale, and his body limp. Emma fumbled for her phone, quickly dialing 911. The operator informed her that an ambulance would take 10 to 15 minutes to arrive. Emma looked at the man's frail form, her mind racing. He doesn't have 10 minutes, she thought to herself. Summoning all her strength, she helped him into a sitting position. The man leaned on her, his weight heavier than she expected. Emma could feel the urgency in his shallow breaths. "Hold on," she whispered, more to herself than to him. Guiding him back to her taxi, Emma carefully settled him into the back seat. Her hands gripped the wheel tightly as she drove toward the nearest hospital. Her mind focused on one thing: getting him there in time. The city streets seemed endless, the traffic lights testing her patience. But she pushed through, her heart racing with every second. When they finally reached the emergency entrance, Emma jumped out of the car and helped the man inside. Nurses rushed forward to assist, and soon, he was wheeled away into the treatment area. Emma stood in the now quiet reception area, her hands trembling and her chest heaving. As she sank into a hard plastic chair, the weight of what had just happened began to settle in. She hadn't even thought about it, her reaction had been instinctive. The image of the elderly man lying helpless on the ground replayed in her mind, and she felt a pang of guilt for not noticing his frailty earlier. A nurse approached her, clipboard in hand. Are you the one who brought him in? Yes, Emma replied, straightening up. He's stable now, the nurse said with a reassuring smile. It's nothing life-threatening, likely exhaustion and low blood pressure. But he does need immediate care. And unfortunately, he doesn't have anyone here to handle the costs. She paused, glancing at Emma. Would you be willing to assist? It's not a large amount. But we need to proceed quickly. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Her hand instinctively moved to her purse, where the week's savings sat neatly folded. That money was Jake's, his amusement park tickets. His gift. His celebration. Emma could already picture his radiant smile as he enjoyed the rides and games. Her fingers hovered over the clasp of her purse. The weight of the decision pressed down on her. But as her mind flashed back to the man's trembling hand raised in desperation, she felt a surge of resolve. Yes, I'll help, she said, her voice steady despite the storm in her heart. The nurse smiled gratefully and walked away. Emma handed over the money, her chest heavy but her conscience clear. It was the right thing to do, even if it meant breaking a promise to her son. As she sat back in the chair, staring at the floor, Emma felt a knot of guilt twist in her stomach. How would she tell Jake that the amusement park was no longer an option? How could she explain that all the money she had worked so hard to save was gone? She pulled out her phone and scrolled through photos of Jake, focusing on one from his last birthday. In it, he held a small cupcake with a single candle, his smile bright and full of innocence. Emma let out a faint smile. Maybe she couldn't give him the day she had planned, but she would still make it special. She would find a way. As Emma left the hospital, the cool night air greeted her, brushing against her face and pulling her out of her thoughts. The weight of what had just happened lingered heavily on her shoulders. But there was also a strange sense of calm within her. She had done the right thing, of that she was sure. Yet, as the reality of her decision began to settle, so did the guilt. Emma climbed into her taxi and sat in silence for a moment. Her hands rested on the steering wheel, gripping it tightly as if it could steady the whirlwind of emotions inside her. She imagined Jake's face when she told him the truth, his bright smile dimming with disappointment. He had been so excited, counting down the days to his birthday. She had promised him a day at the amusement park, a promise she could no longer keep. As the engine roared to life, Emma tried to shake off her unease. There was no use dwelling on it now. Instead, she turned her thoughts to Jake's resilience. He was a good boy, always understanding of their situation, even at his young age. Still, Emma knew how much this meant to him, and the thought of letting him down stung more than she wanted to admit. The drive to her sister Lisa's house was quiet, the streets of Chicago nearly deserted in the early hours of the morning. Lisa often watched Jake during Emma's late-night shifts, providing a safe and loving environment for him. Emma felt a pang of gratitude for her sister, who had always been her unwavering support since the day Jake was born. When Emma arrived, Jake was already asleep, curled up on the couch with his favorite blanket. His chest rose and fell in steady breaths, a peaceful smile on his face even in slumber. Emma crouched down beside him, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. For a moment, the stress of the night melted away, replaced by the pure love she felt for her son. Lisa appeared in the doorway, her expression soft with concern. "You're late tonight," she said quietly, stepping into the room. Emma nodded, standing to her full height. "There was an emergency," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "An elderly man collapsed. I had to take him to the hospital." Lisa's brows furrowed. "Is he okay?" "He's stable now," Emma said with a sigh. "But I had to use the money I saved for Jake's birthday to pay for his treatment. He had no one else to help him." Her voice cracked as she spoke, the weight of the confession settling in her chest. Lisa reached out, placing a comforting hand on Emma's shoulder. "You did the right thing, Emma. Jake will understand. He's a smart boy." "I hope so," Emma replied, her voice tinged with doubt. I just don't know how to tell him. He's been looking forward to tomorrow for weeks. Lisa squeezed her shoulder gently. You'll find the right words. You always do. As Emma gathered Jake into her arms and carried him to the car, her thoughts raced. How could she make his birthday special without the amusement park? The question gnawed at her. Even as she drove home, as they neared their small apartment, Emma noticed flashing lights ahead, red and blue, cutting through the darkness. Her stomach sank as she slowed the car, her mind jumping to the worst possible conclusions. Was something wrong? Had the elderly man taken a turn for the worse? When Emma stepped out of the car, Jake stirred in her arms, his sleepy eyes blinking open. Mom, what's going on? He asked groggily. I'm not sure, sweetheart, Emma replied, her voice steady despite the unease growing in her chest. Standing near the ambulance was a man in a sharp suit. He stepped forward as Emma approached, his expression warm but serious. Miss Emma, he asked, his voice calm and measured. Yes, she replied, shifting Jake's weight in her arms. I'm James, the son of the gentleman you helped earlier tonight, he said, extending his hand. Emma shook it, her confusion evident. Is he okay? James nodded. He's doing well. Thanks to you. My father insisted we come here tonight. He wanted to thank you personally. Emma's eyes widened as she noticed the elderly man sitting on a stretcher, surrounded by doctors and paramedics. His face was pale but calm, and when their eyes met, he gave her a weak but heartfelt smile. Before Emma could respond, James pulled an envelope from his pocket and held it out to her. This is a token of our gratitude, he said. Please, accept it. You went above and beyond to help a stranger in need. Emma hesitated, her hands trembling as she reached for the envelope. When she opened it, her breath caught in her throat. Inside was a check with a sum so large, she could hardly believe her eyes. I can't accept this, she stammered. I didn't help him expecting anything in return. James smiled gently. That's exactly why you deserve it. This is for you and your son to make your lives a little easier. Tears welled in Emma's eyes as she clutched the envelope, her voice barely a whisper. Thank you. I don't know what to say. The elderly man nodded at her, his gratitude shining in his tired eyes. Emma's heart swelled with emotion as she realized the profound impact of her actions. Emma stood on the quiet street, the envelope still clutched tightly in her hands. The weight of the unexpected gift was almost as overwhelming as the events of the night. Jake, now fully awake, stared curiously at the scene, his sleepy confusion replaced by wide-eyed wonder. Mom, who are they? He asked softly, tugging at her sleeve. Emma glanced down at her son, her heart heavy with both relief and uncertainty. How could she explain this sudden twist of fate to a 10-year-old? She crouched down beside him, brushing a hand through his tousled hair. They're here because of something I did earlier, she said gently. I helped someone who needed me, and now they're saying thank you. Jake's eyes darted to the elderly man on the stretcher, who offered a small wave. Jake waved back shyly, his youthful curiosity piqued. Is he okay? Jake asked, his voice tinged with concern. He's going to be fine. Thanks to the doctors, Emma assured him. And thanks to a little help from us. Jake nodded solemnly, his expression thoughtful. That's good. Mom, helping people is important, right? Emma felt a lump rise in her throat at her son's innocent words. She pulled him into a hug, her emotions threatening to spill over. Yes, sweetheart. It's very important. As James and the medical team began to pack up, Emma found herself lingering, her thoughts swirling. She wanted to say more, to express the depth of her gratitude, but the words felt insufficient. James approached her again, his expression soft. My father told me how selflessly you acted tonight, he said. You gave without hesitation, even when it came at a personal cost. People like you remind us of what humanity truly means. Emma shook her head humbly. I just did what anyone would have done. Not everyone would have. James replied firmly, and that's why you deserve this. As the ambulance pulled away into the night, Emma stood with Jake by her side, the city lights casting a gentle glow around them. The envelope in her hand felt heavier now, not because of its monetary value but because of what it represented, a validation of her actions, a reminder of the good she had done, and a symbol of hope for the future. Back inside their small apartment, Emma set the envelope on the kitchen table and turned to Jake. He was still brimming with questions, his youthful energy undimmed by the late hour. "Mom, can we open it?" he asked eagerly, his eyes fixed on the envelope. Emma smiled, her heart warming at his excitement. "Not tonight, Jake. It's been a long day, and you need to get some sleep. Tomorrow's still a special day. No matter what." Jake's face lit up. "You mean we're still going to celebrate my birthday?" "Of course," Emma replied, pulling him into a tight hug. "I promised you a special day, and I always keep my promises." The next morning dawned bright and clear, the sun streaming through the curtains as Emma woke to the sound of Jake's laughter. He had already dressed and was bounding around the small apartment, his excitement infectious. Emma took a deep breath as she prepared breakfast, her mind racing with ideas for the day. The envelope still sat on the table, untouched but ever present, a quiet reminder of the night before. She had yet to decide how to use the money, but one thing was clear: it would change their lives in ways she had never dreamed. By the time breakfast was finished, Emma had a plan. Though the amusement park might not happen that day, she was determined to give Jake an unforgettable birthday. They would visit the local zoo, have a picnic in the park, and end the day with his favorite chocolate cake. As they walked out the door, Emma felt a renewed sense of purpose. The events of the previous night had reminded her of the power of kindness, of the profound impact a single act of empathy could have on the world. She hoped to instill that same value in Jake, to teach him that life's greatest rewards often came from helping others. The day unfolded in a whirlwind of joy. At the zoo, Jake marveled at the lions and laughed at the antics of the monkeys. Their picnic in the park was filled with laughter and stories. And when they returned home that evening, the chocolate cake was the perfect finale to an unforgettable day. As Jake blew out the candles, his wish whispered so quietly Emma couldn't hear, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. The challenges of the past seemed distant now, replaced by a hopeful future. That night, as Emma tucked Jake into bed, he looked up at her with sleepy eyes. "Mom, today was the best birthday ever," he murmured. Emma kissed his forehead, her heart full. "I'm glad, sweetheart. You deserve it." As she turned off the light and closed the door, Emma glanced at the envelope on the table. Tomorrow, she would open it and begin to plan for their future, a future shaped by kindness, resilience, and the unwavering love between a mother and her son. As Emma sat in the quiet of her living room that night, the envelope finally opened on the table before her. Tears welled up in her eyes. The generosity of the elderly man and his son had not only eased her financial burden but also restored her faith in humanity. The events of the past day reminded her of the profound impact small acts of kindness could have and how they often come full circle. Jake's laughter from the other room brought a smile to her face. She vowed to use this blessing to create a brighter future for her son and to continue helping others whenever she could. Life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it, Emma thought. Sometimes, giving without expecting anything in return can lead to rewards far greater than imagined. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Life Stories for more heartwarming tales.